this is LSU being compared to LSU.
Yeah.
Like this is an analysis of how many times have you seen LSU open up with big game opponent or directional school and look unprepared.
It's one of the reasons why I think this game resonates so much more with us here locally than maybe a lot of national guys. Because like if you're not so in the weeds where you cover this team or talk about it like we do, then then you necessarily haven't felt those struggles. Like you've seen the score lines from years past where, let's say you play a group of 5 team and LSU ends up winning what, like 35-14 or 35-17, right? And you see that final score, you're like, okay, they won handily, that's fine. But they probably didn't watch the game. We did. And so we saw the first half struggles where it was like 10-7 going into halftime. And you saw the just kind of grindy, halting, trip over your own feet feeling offense for years and years. And then so to go from that, then go to this, it's like I said, I can't get out of that Moses analogy. It just finally feels like you have been brought to the promised land. Freedom, the shackles are off. Will Wade, when he was hired as the LSU basketball coach, talked about awakening a sleeping giant, right? A lumbering giant. Well, today on this Monday, it feels like Joe Brady unlocked a sleeping giant here in South Louisiana as far as LSU's offense is concerned. And we're going to talk a lot about Joe Brady, but it'd be remiss if I didn't give Steve Ensminger some credit because we've talked about it, Jordy. It's probably a weird dynamic there. There's potential for tension there, I think. Like, who's going to be the ultimate guy at the end of the day? They say it's Ensminger, and Ensminger called a hell of a game on Saturday. So the debut of Spread Ogeron was just a resounding success. I kept calling for 40 points and 500 yards. They end up with 55 points and 474 yards. 14 different guys catching balls. As Jordy said, though, 9 in the first half. Now, that's important. Because the only way you get to 14 is if you start playing other guys, right? Because you've beat them so badly, you get your backups in. But when your starters were in, to have 9 different guys catch it, tell me that does not feel like a New Orleans Saints box score that you have seen since 2006 with Drew Brees and Sean Payton. Burrow, more than 80% completion, more touchdowns than incompletions. 5 drives, 5 scores, using up just 11 minutes of clock. And what does it all come down to? Why does it all work? Jordy, it's just like how this recent revolution has taken place in the NBA with the Warriors and spacing and how much more of a spacing game the NBA has come. That's what this LSU offense is looking to take advantage of. They know they have the athletes, right? The potential's always been there. And Joe Brady wants to really stretch and really thin out that defense and allow these playmakers to operate in space. And how many times this last game, when the guy caught the ball, was there like not a defender within like 5 or 10 yards? I mean, just wide open. And that speaks to great scheme. That speaks to great play design as well as the correct decision being made. But that's what this offense can be boiled down to, is just getting your best players in space and allowing them to beat their defender one-on-one.
Anonymous user inside the huddle, powered by the Bayou Ford Group. What I loved most about the slogan, everybody eats, is that Saturday night, everyone was looking hungry. That was true, man, is that everybody got to get into the action.
Yeah.
I mean, that was what we heard about in the offseason was Justin Jefferson, who had been so much more targeted than anybody else on this team last year. I think it was like 90-40 in between he and Sullivan.
Yeah, it was.
As far as the drop-off
200% of Sullivan's
incredible. And to
output.
see the amount that the way that the ball was distributed on Saturday night, especially in the first half, like we talked about, not only the players that it was distributed to, but what in the fashion that they were getting the ball to those guys. I mean, through the middle of the field. I mean, LSU for the first time in so long in the passing game is now playing in between the numbers. Thad Moss, an opening drive catch in the middle of the field, working in some slant routes to Jefferson and Marshall and Chase. Chase catching his first touchdown on a skinny post route right up the seam of the field that Burrow puts it right on his face mask to. And the guys that they're throwing the ball, I mean, Terrace Marshall's the 3rd wide receiver on this team.
Yeah.
The personnel on this squad, you start bringing in the backs and throwing the ball to Fournette, Emery in the open field. How good did he look?
Yeah, that 17-yard, he broke that dude down.
Just one
straight
step
up
in the grass.
And once again, get your playmaker the ball in space and let him go one-on-one. And Emery won that battle, and then 17 yards later, you're set up for another score.
Tons of Ogeron sound following Saturday night's opening week win. Here he is talking about his offense.
There's going to be some things. There was some penetration in the backfield. We're going to have to run the ball better. No, let's see if we can protect the passer against some of the opponents we play. So we know we can throw the ball. We know we can get guys open. Can we protect the pass on a consistent basis? I think that's going to be a big key for us.
Yeah, something we didn't even talk about, 0 sacks. I mean, 0 sacks on a day when your starting left tackle guy that you think is going to be really good didn't even play. Can there be any further vindication of what Matt Flynn talked about last year and what I've continuously hammered this last year, that the scheme was screwing over the offensive line last year, 100%. That the scheme was leading to a net negative. 100%. It's so funny how when you present your quarterback with options and you allow him outlets and you allow him to get rid of the ball, it's so funny how much better an offensive line suddenly looks, right? Why have the Saints have a very good O-line now, like objectively, but why in some of those middle years where they didn't, where they still look so good and the sack numbers so good? Because Breeze is your best friend if you're an O-lineman. And with how Joe Burrow played on Saturday, it's not always going to be that smooth. Like, let's be clear. There's going to be more adversity. There's going to be times where it doesn't look good. But with how he looked on Saturday, you saw a lot of former LSU players tweeting stuff about, like, I wish I was in this offense. I wish I was in this offense. As an O-lineman, I wish I was in this offense. It would have been great. Yeah. You hold your block for a second and a half and the ball's out and you're good to go. You look like you're a beast. I mean, it was great job by the O-line, but as we said preseason, I think that improvement's almost going to be kind of tough to discern what's a player just getting better and what is finally a scheme that is just putting players in better positions to succeed.
Fournette, Geis, Chark.
Different.
All of them talking about what it would have been like and how different maybe it would have been for their time at LSU and playing in an offense. It just has a clear vision of who and what they want to be.
That's a good point. Identity shine through.
I mean, the identity that they have just introduced to you of who they want to be. You can feel how this thing's going to continue to evolve. One of the things that was a storyline last week that Orgeron talked about in the postgame was hiding, protecting, not opening up the playbook. Throw that mindset out, man. That's LSU football is gone from the days of hiding things from their opponents. They are going to put things on film to make their opponents have to prepare for more. Yeah. Just like the Burrow sliding over and Clyde Edwards-Helaire taking the direct snap on that. That's one more thing that Texas has to look at and get prepared. Here's Orgeron talking about that on Saturday night.
No, we didn't show it all. We didn't need to. The stuff was working on 11 personnel, but we got 4 wides, we have 5 wides. We have an empty package that we haven't used,
I mean, and so that's I almost wish Burrow would have gone Orgeron would have gone the sarcastic Burrow route, where I think Burrow after the game was like, yeah, that was everything. Like, yeah, that was absolutely everything. Make sure you write that down. That was everything we have. That's the wildest part about all of this is they only showed the basic principles. That was a
That's what principle. It's just an introduction.
Yes, that was a principled
introduction of who they're going to be.
Offensive attack. There was not a lot of special quirks. As Orgeron said, they almost played. I mean, I'm going to really dive into the film today. I rewatched it just for fun yesterday, drinking beers and cooking. But they only ran 11 personnel. I got to see if somewhere else they changed it up, but there's still plenty of quirks and twists that they can do and get way more game plan specific. That was like a generic Saints spread attack.
We showed everything we got, all of it. Make sure you write that.
All right, we'll talk more about LSU's dominating win on Saturday.
Now we get
to preview this LSU-Texas matchup.
Get to the other parts of the game. We talked about the defense or Cade York or the special teams.
All right, so one thing before we move on from the LSU offense's performance on Saturday, Shea Dixon put out a great tweet Sunday morning that really kind of brings to light just where LSU has come from to what they showed on Saturday night.
Yeah, so in 2018, in 13 games, LSU had 99 punt return yards. In one game on Saturday, they had 52 punt return yards. In 2018, in 13 games, 14 different players caught a pass. Over the entire season, 14 players caught a pass. In one game, Saturday night, 14 players caught a pass. In 2018, in 13 games, 4 running backs caught passes. In 2019, in one game, 5 running backs caught passes. So, I mean, if that doesn't just lay out right there just how nice Saturday night was compared to what LSU fans have been used to, I can't imagine a more succinct way to do it.
Defensively, what was the most impressive thing you saw?
I mean, just the same way the offense was statistically dominant, so was the defense. 98 total yards. You held a good Georgia Southern offense, one that has had success a lot of times one that is used to rushing for 200 yards a game. You held them to under 100 total yards for the game. What did we talk about all week last week? Georgia Southern turned it over 5 times in 13 games last year. So they turned it over 5 times over an entire season. They turned it over twice in the first 4 series the other night. You have all the guys you wanted to play well. Caleb Vaughn looks like he's ready to murder people. He's already put Sam Ehlinger on the hit list. Jacoby Stevens making plays in the background. Rashard Lawrence with the forced fumble. Damone Clark. Ed Ogeron kept talking about Damone Clark last week, and he looked spectacular. Second on the team with 9 tackles. And the TFL on the fake pitch was, I think you said it before the show, Jordy. It was Devin White-esque in the athleticism by Damone Clark there. And then you just go down the list. Tyler Shelvin looked really good at nose, clogging up the middle, also making plays himself. So Jacob Phillips with 10 tackles. I mean, you just go down the list and everything looked good for the offense. I don't care who you play. It is really tough to hold a team under 100 yards. It's even tougher when you're going against a squad in Georgia Southern that averaged over 30 points a game last year, won 10 games. Like, Georgia Southern is not as bad as they looked Saturday night. So what I liked about the defense was everything.
Yeah, everything. You brought up a couple of players. Jacoby Stevens, again, Stevens flying around, making plays. He and Delpin on the back end of that defense looked like 2 of the most athletic safeties in football. It was great to see Stingley out there. You brought up the punt return yards. I thought for sure that he was going to have a chance to house the first one and the second one. He got crushed on the second one, though. I mean, I don't know how that wasn't a helmet-to-helmet hit with Stingley on that second return. But I think Tom Granning just said it inside the huddle, powered by the Bayou Ford Group. Better teams probably not going to kick it to him. I mean, he showed you that he's a step away if you put him in open space.
I don't think they're quite. I don't think Stingley's quite commanding that you can't kick it to him respect yet. But the potential to be that guy was definitely on display the other night. What was the main problem with the LSU defense last year?
Defensive line?
I think more, rush defense, right? 167 yards per game given up last year. That's not good. And if you look at the biggest games, they gave up over 200-yard rushing a couple times, including, I think, in all of those losses. So then they go against a Georgia Southern team, that's what they excel at, and to hold them to 74 yards on 39 carries, 1.9 yards per attempt, that's spectacular. That is absolutely spectacular. So you took what was your weakest portion of your defense last year, and you passed that first week test with flying colors.
Here's Ogeron talking about his linebacker, Damone Clark, who shined on Saturday.
Like I said in every interview, watch out for Damone Clark. And he was, I look at the linebacker grades on a daily basis, and I see some 67%, so I see 100 about Damone Clark every day. And he came to work. He showed Dave that he can play tonight. Like I said, I think he's going to be a tremendous LSU linebacker.
And now we've got a bit of an awkward situation at linebacker where with the emergence of Damone Clark, you have so many guys, right? Like Divinity not playing in game 1. What does his return to the lineup look like? Who leaves? Does Damone Clark go out? Does Jacob Phillips go out? Patrick Queen had a nice fumble recovery and almost housed it. So, like, I guess you just keep a rotation going. That was another thing on display the other night. The rotation and multiple positions, whether it was running back, linebacker, D-line. They're not afraid to play a lot of different guys in order to keep people fresh going into the fourth quarter, which I think is great.
Yeah, the rotation between Ika and Shelvin looked like it was working. Shelvin looked good out there. Ika, I know there's some reports about Ika leaving the game in a boot. I think that he was wearing that actually going in to the game. That was a camp injury that they're just kind of trying to stay on top of. So, but by all accounts, I think he'll be good to go. Here's one more of Ogeron talking on an individual. Here he is talking about Jacoby Stevens.
He's dangerous. He's got speed. He's a good tackler. He's a good rusher. We didn't get to rush him much tonight, and he's strong and he's physical. He's probably the strongest player pound for pound on our football team.
Well, and so there's the other part of this, right, is that because Georgia Southern runs the triple option, we didn't even get a true view into the new hyper-aggressive style of defensive line play that LSU wants to have, or we didn't get a true view into really how this pass rush of LSU is going to be. But with how good every other facet of this team looked and how good Caleb Chasson looked, like, you have to imagine that this pass rush is going to be as scary as the rest of the squad looked on Saturday.
All right, Sam Ehlinger had 4 touchdown passes for Texas on Saturday night. Here was Caleb Von Chassa on the postgame answering a couple of questions about the next test ahead for LSU.
I knew it was coming. I saw it on the schedule as a recruit. I'm glad that we get to go against him again. I don't really find him too much as a threat. I mean, not taking a shot at him, but he uses his legs more than his arms. So just like high school, he has a decent arm on him, but it's more about his legs.
I love that, man. I'm not taking a shot at him. He's just not a threat.
It's like Rivers said the other day. There's nothing as good when it comes to sports sound bites as a good, like, no offense.
Yeah,
basically. I mean, I don't think he's that good.
This isn't to take a shot at the guy, but
he's just not a threat. I mean, but let's be clear, like, a good guy, whatever. Yeah, he's fine. He's fine. He's just not a threat. So they squared up, though. So at the beginning of that, the kind of premise of the question is that Ehlinger and him squared up in the Texas 6A state championship, and I believe that Caleb Von team won, correct?
yes, Caleb Von won the championship.
And so now here they are from Texas, the biggest schools. Caleb Von leaves the state, Ehlinger stays, and they're squaring up with even more on the line than that 6A state championship. It's going to be excellent. I cannot wait to see fully unlock Caleb Von Chase on next week.